my grandfather was driving, and he said that all of a sudden in the street, there was this like red, flashing lights, like red thing that just dropped down in the middle of the street.
What?
And my grandfather, like, he was like a pretty strict guy, like was in the Navy, like he was like a tough man, like, he wouldn't believe just anything, like it just drops down below them. And all of a sudden it just like flies to like the side, and it just disappears like in a flash of a second. And there was a guy outside of his porch, and he asked him like, hey, like, did you see that? And the guy was like, yeah, like I saw that light, those flashing lights, and like it was flashing in a circular motion. You could see like, little dots that would move, really fast in like almost quadratic motion. And he said that it couldn't have been a helicopter or an airplane at that, because it would form, like L's, almost like squares.
There has to be another species besides us. Like maybe they've gone extinct before us, or they're no longer around, or maybe they're in hiding in another planet. Or it mind blows me that people believe that we are the only intelligent like species in this whole galaxy, when like we're finding water on Mars, and underneath we're finding those Great Lakes on Mars and stuff. And also like the history of like the Egyptians with their drawings on the walls. Like, is that just made up? Like, to me, I believe in history, and it just can't be a coincidence,
Yeah, and it makes you think I'm glad that you mentioned that, because a lot of the historical, cultures, they a lot of the things that, or gods that they talked about, came from heaven, and that's the idea of heaven, and maybe since they didn't have the technology to fly up into the clouds, like we do now we know like there's something more past the clouds, right? These signs and these stories about gods coming from heaven and expecting things to come from the sky, right? There's some truth to it.
The sky people, you hear that a lot. They worship sky people back then.
I was watching a documentary about the Mayan ruins, and there was a lot of areas, where they have almost, things created so like an aircraft could land or take off.
Yeah,
they
have like these ramps. That. Yeah.
Was that like the pyramids kind of thing?
Yeah. So
yeah.
It's like in the Mayan ruins, the temples, they would create, they found some almost like landing, like
platforms,
platforms, yeah.
Well, and they even talk about now, like if we wanted to replicate the pyramids in Egypt, it'd be almost impossible for us to do that, but they're there, so it's not impossible. I mean, someone made those, but they say it's impossible for architects nowadays to do it, even though we're so advanced in technology.
Like back then, we didn't have the technology necessary to carry boulders with that, to carry them at such a distance, and put them in a specific spot, that just, not even like a couple men, could carry those big chunks of rock. And so, it makes you think like, well, maybe they had help from other beings, other beings that can move these rocks or had the technology to move them.
For them to be able to move boulders that size up there, it would have to have such a significant ramp with such a slow increase over time, for them to be able to push it up there. But with those significant ramps, there would still be evidence of them till this day. But think about it. We don't see no ramps anywhere.
Yeah.
We don't see none of that. It's
where they were positioned in the earth, in itself, has a lot of connections with energy. And what they were thinking is that these pyramids were constructed in a way to carry almost like an internet connection where you can transport messages,
like signals back and forth.
Signals,
that.
Could they have created? Because we often think that people back then weren't as intelligent as we are now, but the reality is, civilization has always had some level of intelligence. There's always been intelligent people across history, like Plato, Aristotle, And then
Leonardo da Vinci.
Leonardo da Vinci,
Yeah.
Einstein. Who's to say they didn't build complicated crane systems or pulley systems to be able to move those really heavy bricks, you know?
See, my question to you about that is, there would still be evidence of those.
I was like, well, what if the cranes are made of wood and string and those would deteriorate like that, like hundreds of thousands of years later, those would
Yeah,
be.
but think about fossilized wood. We find that all the time. Wouldn't it just fossilize over time?
The thing about fossilization is it only happens under very certain circumstances. So if it doesn't get fossilized at a certain time period, it's gonna never be fossilized and it'd be destroyed and deteriorated. But yeah, no, like I definitely, well, on that note, I believe in aliens because I believe the universe is too big to not have other life, you know?
And we live in the 21st century. I mean, you know, it's kind of crazy that at this point with the technology that we have, we still haven't been able to figure out how exactly these were created. There was no way to cut, you know, back then a rock that big.
That
you know?
that size.
How can you cut a rock and leave it, you know, precise with the right measurements? And that's because to do the whole thing that, you know, that would have taken ages.
Hey, have y'all heard about this this report the FBI released about UFOs?
Yeah, I've heard about parts of it. Some would say like this is too advanced for our civilization, which, I mean,
yeah.
How much do we actually know that we're being told is true, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, so like right here it says in 18 incidents, they saw unusual UAP, which UAP is the new term for UFO now. They saw unusual movement patterns of these UFOs and flight characteristics, I guess, that they couldn't explain.